continuing with my Sonic train. I think it's time to do the other Mean Bean Machine, the Genesis version, which will be in the first 10 games, doing 3 different versions of Puyo Puyo. But again, all these versions do have differences in them. This version, for one, you can't start on level 4 like you could in Kirby's Avalanche. But then also, in this version, if an enemy or you creates just a single combo of 4, it will do damage, even if it's just one, or will be just one single block of damage. Which seems like it's not a big deal, but it actually, in some later levels, can become kind of a big problem. Because while you're trying to set up combos, they're constantly doing just that one damage. And pretty much every time that one damage is going to be pretty likely to mess up what you're trying to do. I find generally this is the hardest version of original Puyo Puyo, other than I've not completed the original Super Famicom Puyo Puyo. I don't know if there's a difference, but I don't know if original Puyo Puyo was on was it on Mega Drive and Super Famicom? Probably. I don't have the Mega Drive version because I don't have a Mega Drive. But I do have a Super Famicom, and so far the only games I have on it are 3 different Puyo Puyo games. I've got Puyo Puyo 1, Puyo Puyo 2, and Puyo Puyo 2 Remix, which I need to see what the differences between Puyo Puyo 1, or Puyo Puyo 2 and Puyo Puyo 2 Remix are. Because I don't know that those would count as separate games. Whereas I count both these versions of Mean Bean Machine as separate games, because they are different. At least sufficiently different to my definition of different. But then I also have Dragon Quest V on Super Famicom. That's the only other Super Famicom game I have right now. I do also have an original Famicom game, but I don't have an original Famicom, so I wouldn't be able to do anything with that. Don't even really know what the game is. I just found it for pretty cheap and bought it. Yeah, historically I found this to be the hardest version of Mean Bean Machine, or of Puyo Puyo. And honestly, the hardest Puyo Puyo game, except... well, second hardest Puyo Puyo game. I need to play it again to really see. But I found the hardest Puyo Puyo game from all I've played was actually Puyo Pop Fever on Game Boy Advance. And the reason I find that so difficult is because with how the game is made, with how it's designed, I felt like I was getting it to where the enemies were getting fever mode more than I was. So I kind of felt like I would just lose for no reason in a lot of cases. But I'd have to play it again to see if maybe I just wasn't understanding how the game worked. So I kind of don't think I really like the fever mechanic. I feel like it kind of changed up the gameplay too much. Generally speaking, so far, many of the Puyo Puyo games have been about 30 minutes. But that's not going to be true for every Puyo Puyo game. They do get longer later on. And in fact, Puyo Pop on Game Boy Advance is actually kind of a longer game. That one would be about an hour at least, maybe even an hour and a half. And that's because there's just so many more fights you have to do in Puyo Pop. Because in this game and the other Puyo Puyo games, it's like 13 levels, I think. Around there, at least. But Puyo Pop on Game Boy Advance, it's like you do one level, and that one level has like 3 fights you do. And then level 2 will have like 4 fights you do. And so there's just a lot more levels in the game in general compared to these earlier Puyo Puyo games. And I think also even later games like the Puyo Puyo Tetris games would have, I think, way more levels. I think they're a little different, though, in Puyo Puyo Tetris. I think there's a lot more just, like, small challenges you do rather than just defeat your opponent. And that's actually an interesting thing. Sometimes it is hard when these games have different game modes to kind of tell what is a good definition for beating the game. Like, which game mode would you say is required to beat the game? Like, which game mode do you have to complete? Ah, didn't see that rock there. And if this was any other version, again, he would not have been able to have dropped that rock, I don't think. Because that was just a normal combo. And again, there's that rock again. I had a perfect move to do a combo. But because he got one rock, now all of a sudden I can't. Because it does seem like the game is balanced around. It tries to put the rocks in very inconvenient spots, for sure. I still ended up managing to win, and in fact, I'm past the part where I'd gotten stuck before. Is actually the previous level with the ninja guy. But I remembered getting like super stuck, so. But yeah, sometimes it's pretty easy to kind of judge what game mode you would need to do to beat a game. Because, like, Mean Bean Machine on Game Gear actually has 2 different game modes that both do have endings. Like, you can beat those game modes. It has the story mode, and it has puzzle mode. But I think that's pretty obvious that puzzle mode's kind of the side mode. And you get the story, you get the credits, you get the end of the game by doing story mode. Story mode's generally considered the main game in most games. So I think that one's pretty obvious that that's what you would consider the story mode. But I think a very interesting thing comes with the game Kirby Super Star Stacker on Super Famicom. Because the original Star Stacker on Game Boy, which I might end up doing that one. Because the thing is that's an easy game that I can just kind of play and do. Like with these Puyo Puyos. And some of the Tetris games I'm probably going to do. The problem is Star Stacker's really long, actually. Even though you are just going puzzle through puzzle and beating all of them, there's just so many and they get really long in the later difficulties that it legit would take, I mean, not an insanely long time. It's still easily doable in one day. It's just if you compare this game and a lot of the other Mean Bean Machines, or Puyo Puyo rather, are like 30 minutes. Puyo Pops maybe 2 hours. And then Kirby Star Stacker is like 4 hours. Because there's just that many levels. But I would like to do Star Stacker just because I think Star Stacker's probably, honestly, my favorite Falling Block puzzle game. I think Kirby Star Stacker, like, I can't believe no one's ever, like, that they just stopped doing Star Stacker. They made 2 Star Stacker games and then just stopped. No more Star Stacker. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it didn't sell very well, but to be fair, Super Star Stacker was exclusive to Japan. Never got brought over. As far as I know, I don't think it's on Nintendo Switch Online. Like Panel de Pawn is. But I don't know. I thought it was a really good idea, and I think it's a really fun game. And I'd very much like it if they did bring it back and made a new version. Because it's just... Because I think it has the best... What it is it has the best, like, single-player story mode where the objective is kind of self-contained to a single-player format. Because in this game, you do have a single-player mode, but you're versing a CPU. So it's not a single-player format, really. It's a multiplayer format where you're just facing a CPU. And also, I really need to remember, you do have to press start to skip or to retry. Because if you mash X to try and restart, it actually makes the timer go down. And if I completely game over, well, I can always check my password. So that actually wouldn't be too big of an issue. I could just always restart, but still, it would be kind of awkward too. Accidentally go back to the main menu. Although that is a situation in which if this were any other version of Puyo Puyo, I don't lose there. Or any of the other 2 versions we've done. I would not have lost there. The only reason I lost is because he made a single match and that made a single rock appear in the one spot that I could have cleared out. And I think that just shows why this is my least favorite version of these 3. Because I don't know, I don't feel like making a single match of 4 should be that powerful. To where you can literally win because you made one match at the right time. Especially because the game is all about making combos. It's not about how many matches you can do. You know, like in something like Bejeweled, making a match of more than 3 always gets you like more score and power-ups and whatever. Because the game is made for trying to get more than just the 3 matches. This game, if you get 5, if you combine 5 instead of just 4, it doesn't do that much more. Than if you had just made 4. It's not that much more powerful. Because this game isn't based around getting those types of combos. This game is based around making combos, making the blocks fall, and doing another combo. And if that's the case, if that's how the game is made, that's what it's designed to do, I don't think getting a single match should have any sort of potential to win you the game. So that's why I personally don't really like that mechanic and how it's implemented. And granted, this, obviously, a lot of these games were made before people became more competitive and wanting, like, you know, balance. This was always just a game that's like, you just kind of play it for fun. So they probably weren't, like, really thinking about that. It probably wasn't... Like, it probably wasn't something they considered of, like, how balanced is this mechanic, you know? They're probably just trying to make a fun game, and it just felt right for them to do, and then they... Well, I mean, I guess I don't really know, because they did change it in other versions. It does work differently across different versions, so maybe they didn't. Maybe they did think about that. I don't know. I don't know which version came first, though. Out of Kirby's Avalanche and Mean Bean Machine. I feel like maybe this one had to be first, though. Since the Game Gear version also keeps one of the changes that they made to Kirby's Avalanche, actually. So maybe they did kind of realize that that didn't work and then changed it. Or it could be they accidentally changed it and they didn't know that that was a thing they needed to put in the game. I don't know. I wasn't there. It seemed like though this is gonna just turn into the same story that the other Puyo Puyos were. Just keep trying till eventually you win. I do wonder, does the background ever change in this game? Because it does in both Kirby's Avalanche and Mean Bean Machine on Game Gear. And if it were to, it should have already happened by now. I actually don't think the background does change. Which actually, that would work towards my theory that this version came first, and then Mean Bean Machine on Game Gear was actually built around Kirby's Avalanche instead of the Genesis version. Because if they had the idea of making the backgrounds change for Kirby's Avalanche, then they probably would have also made that change in this version. But I guess it also could be the other way around. They could have made the Game Gear version, made some changes to the Game Gear version, and then brought those changes to Kirby's Avalanche. And see, there's that single rock. I have the absolute perfect way to make a combo. One single rock falls. And now I can't do it. And then another rock, you know. So it's like now I'm in a really bad spot, but he wasn't making any combos. He wasn't doing anything to really turn the tides in his favor. He was just making small combos while I was trying to build up bigger combos. Then he hits me with a single combo and I lose. That's just not balanced. That shouldn't be how the game works. And this is what I remember of this version of Puyo Puyo, this version of Mean Bean Machine, is just this constant... You lose a level, the same level 1,000 times, because the enemy just gets one lucky move and then you lose. And granted, there is always, I could be playing better. There are strategies to where any pro Puyo Puyo player would have already beaten the game by now. But I don't know those strategies. Or lineups or anything, so... This is about all I got as more of a casual player of these falling block puzzle games. I don't know any, like, super good strategies for any of them. I couldn't, you know, do a T-spin in Tetris or anything. Though I did have the speedrun world record for most of the categories in Kirby Star Stacker for a while. I think I had in every difficulty except normal and insane. Those were the two difficulties I never had the record in. And in fact, I never did a run of insane. I should do that at some point. But again, that's like 3 hours long. But yeah, and I'm pretty sure the levels follow the exact same pattern as in the Game Gear version. So there should only be 2 levels left after this. And we'll see if it keeps the same way as with the Game Gear version, where... And even Kirby's Avalanche, though it was less noticeable in Kirby's Avalanche. But to where the second to final level... Is it true that in all 3 of these games is the second to final level the actual hardest level? And then the final boss is actually a lot easier? Because that did happen in Kirby's Avalanche, but it was obviously very noticeable in the Game Gear version, where I lost a few times to Scratch and then beat Robotnik in 30 seconds without really even doing anything. And again, sometimes it is just computer RNG. I lost to the Sir Fuzzy Logic, like, a few times. And then just beat that guy first try. So... But I'm sure if I were to play this game over and over, there's a chance that I beat Sir Fuzzy Logic super easily, and then I lose to that guy a lot. That was bad. I didn't realize that. This is actually a game. I'm playing this. I don't know if I showed the menu at first, but a lot of these Sonic games I am playing on Sonic Mega Collection Plus on the PlayStation 2. Because that's just... The main reason I'm playing him on that is because, like, some of these I could play on Genesis. I could play this game on Genesis. I could do Sonic 1 on Genesis. But the main reason I'm playing them on this game instead of on actual Genesis is just because, I mean, this is a very convenient collection of games. Instead of having to hook on my Genesis and then still play this game for some of the Game Gear games, I can just do all of them on this game. But another reason for doing them on this game instead of on the actual Genesis is because, I don't know if it's just my controllers or what, but I think the Genesis controller is super bad for this game. At least the whatever 3-button controller I have just does not work well. And plus, with these being 2D games, playing them on Mega Collection Plus is very convenient because I can use a PlayStation 2 controller. Or actually, I think this is a PlayStation 1 controller. Right, yeah, this is a PlayStation 1 controller. Because I also find just that the PlayStation 1 controllers tend to feel a little nicer than PS2 controllers. I think PS2 controllers feel a little cheaper to me. Like, they just don't feel as sturdy. And I think that was a problem that Sony kind of had. Like, PS2 controllers to me feel worse than PS1 controllers. And then PS3 controllers are just horrible. I don't know that I've ever used a good-feeling PS3 controller. In fact, most of the time when I play PS3 games, unless it needs a 6-axis, I genuinely have played most PS3 games with a PS2 or a PS1 controller, because I have a USB adapter that lets me do that. And yeah, it is just that easy. The final level. Was that faster? No, 41 seconds. 10 seconds, only 10 seconds longer than the Game Gear version. Robotnik. Yeah, I've always felt PS1 and PS2 controllers are just not only better than PS3 controllers, so I use them on a PS3, but also the D-pad's just so nice for 2D games. So being able to use a PS1 D-pad for this game, for Sonic Drift, for Sonic Blast, for all these games, it's just so useful. Even sometimes I'll use a D-pad for racing games if your main movement's just left and right. Like in Pac-Man World Rally, you don't really have to hold forward or backwards very often, so I kind of just use the D-pad to turn because it's a lot easier to go between holding the different buttons than moving the stick back and forth. But yeah, that's 10 games. 3 of them being Puyo Puyo games, and there still is one more, at least of this era of Puyo Puyo. There still is one more of those games to go, and I will do that whenever I can. I just need to find my Super Famicom, because I don't know where it is. I'm missing a few of my consoles that I don't know where they are. So I need to find them. But they're definitely around somewhere. It's not like they're gone forever. I definitely have them somewhere. I just need to find them. Oh yeah, and Has-Been. Has-Been's not in the Game Gear version, is he? That's the character Carbuncle from the real Puyo Puyo games. They just changed his name, but... yeah, he's a real Sonic character, and they need to bring him back in the next game.